approach. And today's conversation is going to highlight this collaborative work that we've been doing. So we're very honored to hear from leaders from the Seal River Watershed Alliance, the Denakaya Institute, and Mushkegowuk Council, who will share their insights. So I'd like now to turn it over to my colleague, Jeff Wells, who's our Vice President for Boreal Conservation, and he's going to share more about the importance of the Boreal region to Audubon's mission and our partnership with indigenous communities, and he'll introduce our panelists for us.
Hello, everybody. Just to double check, this mic's working? Yeah? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is very exciting for all of us, and I think we've already been having some incredible time together with the folks that have been able to make it, and we so appreciate those of you on the Zoom that you've been able to be part of this as well. Thank you. Can we share the slides? We got the clicker coming. Or can we ask you guys to click them forward? Okay. Can you... Okay, sorry, we jumped ahead a little bit. Okay, just starting off here, just giving a quick bit of context, partly about why the National Audubon Society has been very interested in the work of Indigenous nations, governments across the Boreal region of Canada. The North American boreal forest is one of the largest intact forests left on Earth, one of the last forests that doesn't have the large-scale footprint of industrialization over it. It still has something like 70 or 80% of the forest without that industrial footprint, an incredible opportunity for conservation. And it's also home to hundreds of indigenous communities who are moving forward some of the world's biggest conservation activities, anywhere, and completely led by indigenous governments, indigenous organizations. And this is an exciting time for NGOs of all kinds to start learning new ways of how we do conservation. That's really what a lot of this is about. That's what we're hearing a lot about here at COP16. And we hope that we're part of that new learning experience, how we can be allies of indigenous governments and organizations, how we can follow their lead, and we hope really support their efforts. For Audubon, the boreal forest is particularly special. It holds, by some estimates, 1 to 3 billion with a B breeding birds, close to 400 species that either breed or use it on their way south. And in the fall of the year, when you add the young of the year to that means there's a sea of 3 to 5 billion birds that go flowing south out of the boreal forest across the U.S. and into Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, to places like Colombia that has so many of the boreal birds. And if any of you have been out bird watching even just a little bit, you may have been lucky enough to see a few. We've had a few moments out in the last few days and seen some of these boreal birds. It's really special and exciting. So our work in the boreal is, as I said, being allies, partners, following the lead of indigenous organizations. That means sometimes being on a stage at a place like COP16, but it also means sometimes flying in the winter to a remote fly-in community and speaking with the community in a gym and maybe sleeping on the floor of the local community to be part of that, and all sorts of opportunities to really be together and in partnership, and that's the exciting part of this work that helps to move, we hope, this conservation forward. So now I want to introduce the speakers that we're going to hear from today. At first here, we're going to talk with folks from the Seal River Watershed. Stephanie Tharassi is up in the left-hand part of your screen here. Whoops, oh, this podium is falling apart on me. Everything's falling apart. Is coming in from Manitoba to be part of this. And she is joined on the stage by some partners who work with the Seal River Watershed. Liana Anderson on the left of their screen, and Chaz Collier over on the right there. And I'm trying to make sure. I've just got to meet Brennan over here, and I'm trying to make sure I pronounce his name correctly. Brennan Menokisik, who is the Director of Intergovernment Relations for MKO, an Indigenous nonprofit political advocacy organization for the sovereign First Nations they represent in northern Manitoba, and he will have a chance to tell you some more. But we want to start off with Stephanie telling you a little bit more about the Seal River Watershed Alliance and their project. We have some pictures and some video that we'll share.
Awesome.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie. Let's see. Can you guys do a version that shows the slides and Stephanie? This technology stuff is quite interesting to try here.
Hi guys, can you hear me? I'm not sure if you guys can hear me okay.
And you have to listen through the devices to hear it.
Can someone confirm that you guys can hear me okay?
Hold on, Stephanie, sorry. Stephanie, can you go ahead and speak now?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay now?
We can hear you softly, but just a second. We're working out the technology here.
Okay. Get closer.
Go ahead, say some more.
How's that? Can you guys hear me okay? Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay now?
We can hear you, yes.
Awesome. I'm so glad. I'm really, first I'd like to say, Watia, Janet, Stephanie Tharassi Hushe. Hello, everybody. How are you? My name is Stephanie Tharassi. I'm the Executive Director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance. I'm really, really happy to be here to share with some of you about our project. And I wanted to send my apologies for not being able to be there in person. It's getting a little tough for me to travel right now because of how pregnant I am. So I couldn't travel internationally, but we wanted to make sure that we sent a team of people there to be there with you all. The place that I call home is in northern Manitoba. It's almost in Nunavut. We are 50,000 square kilometers, the same size as Costa Rica. We have no industry, no development, no roads, no pollution. The area that we come from is nature as it should be. It is the same way as it has been for a millennia. And we're working really hard to protect this area, protect our backyard and our traditional homelands with partnership with 4 communities. We are working with Northland Dennisothiana First Nation, Barrenlands First Nation, Opipinapiwan Cree Nation, and Thaisydene First Nation. These are the 4 communities that are working together to do this work. And so we have an alliance of 2 Dene communities and 2 Cree communities. So, Jeff, I'm wondering if we could just play the video.
Yes, we'll do that. A couple of pretty bird pictures, and we'll jump to video. Can you play the video?
The Seal River Watershed Initiative is aiming to protect 50,000 square kilometers in northern Manitoba by establishing an Indigenous protected area in the Seal River Watershed. It is Indigenous-led. It follows the rules and the customs, traditions, and values of our peoples first, and that is a priority in this work that we do. We have a healthy environment, a healthy biodiversity, lands, waters for our community members, for the animals, for the caribou, for our people. This is just a formalized way of putting a title or a label to a work that we've done as Indigenous people since time immemorial. This is work that my great-great-great-grandparents have been doing forever. And so what's great about this is that we have an opportunity to talk about our rights as Indigenous people, to talk about self-determination and what that means for us in the greater picture of conservation as well. The watershed is storing 2 billion tons of carbon. So if we protect it, we would be helping to fight climate change. We would be helping Canada protect 30% of the country by 2030. The amount of animals is incredible. We have 25 species at risk that call the watershed their home. At least 200,000 caribou that migrate through the watershed. We want to make sure that we are keeping people connected to the land. It's really important for the longevity and success and sustainability of our cultures. We are supporting our community members by offering opportunities to create real careers and real incomes for themselves, land jobs for land people. The land guardians are the ones that are out there every single day. They're the ones talking to our people, interacting with our elders on a daily basis, communicating with the youth. They are the ones that are seeing the caribou out on the lands and participating in harvesting and feeding the communities and reporting back things that they're seeing. We are doing different kinds of training out on the land, and that's what our biggest goal and mandate is for our guardians, is to be able to encourage and support their need for training, to build the capacity of our community members and the youth and young people so that we can be the ones taking care of this project. We're the ones that can be doing all the monitoring work. We're empowering our guardians to pair their Indigenous science that they all have with some Western science so that they can utilize both types of sciences to be super successful out on our territory. More and more people from around the world are starting to talk about this place in northern Manitoba that has this water you can drink from the lake and has all of these animals and has a coastal area and has a boreal forest. It is a huge territory, the same size as Costa Rica or Nova Scotia. This is really special. You know, when we were at the United Nations Conference on Water, I had so many people come up to me and tell me that it's really, really special to hear about this place that we haven't messed up yet. We were the only project that was working to protect space that has been untouched. And everybody else at this United Nations conference was on the other side of that line, trying to fix their mistakes that they've made to their lands. The protected area proposal that we have put together is something that is following the guidance of our elders and the people who've come before us. It's following the traditions and values of our people and the cultures and customs that we come from as Indigenous people of these lands that sustained us for thousands of years. It's continuing that process of continuing to take care of the land and the waters, the animals that are so important to our communities.
If we can bring Stephanie back on for a second. Stephanie, while they're trying to get your, there you are again. Yeah, I know you wanted to prompt a couple of questions to some of your fellow Seal River watershed and Manitoba folks. So go ahead if you'd like.
Yeah. Um, isn't Elizabeth doing the questions like
No,
after
you can go ahead and do that, and that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to share about the importance and the connection of our communities and our connection about to culture. This is the driving force behind the work that we're doing, and it isn't something new that we're doing. This isn't something that is just coming to light because of the trends around the world to utilize Indigenous knowledge. This is something that our nations and our people have been doing for centuries, and it's really important that we recognize that and honor that, and we make note of all of the failed conservation work that's happened in the past around the world that did not happen with the involvement of Indigenous communities and local voices and local knowledge. So we really want to stand up and remind everyone and share how this work with our nations is imperative if we want to make real changes in the world and we want to make real conservation efforts and have successes that follow suit. You can look at even just our bird report that we released this year. Scientifically, we had 70 birds that used the watershed alone, and the community members knew that this number was far too low. And so with the help of like the Audubon Society and putting up the ARUs and the sound recording devices, we found that there's actually over 102, I think, that were recorded, and that was just what was recorded alone. So we know that we need to utilize both Indigenous knowledge and Western science if we're going to make real change in the world in terms of protecting biodiversity and really reducing the loss of what's out there. We come from such a beautiful place with a there's so many levels of biodiversity that exist in the area where I call home. But I think the most important part of biodiversity is making sure that you include the people that are there, because you can't have nature without people that are from the area being a part of that process and being a part of nature that is there. So I just really wanted to remind our friends that are here with us today and witnessing and hopefully help to strengthen that voice that we really need to work with the local communities on all levels of this kind of work, and not just as meager little advisors to projects. We need to have a real say in this work, and we need to have a stronger voice if we're going to make a big difference in conservation work.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll we'll bring in unless you want to bring Brennan in now. We'll move on to these others and have these guys speak at the end. Is that okay, Stephanie?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Next, I want to invite Jillian Stavely from the Denakea Institute to talk about the project that they are working on and share a video. And so if we can go to the next slide. And Jillian, if you can give me a prompt for when you'd like me to switch the slides.
Sure. Yeah. And can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, as you're bringing that up, I just wanted to say Dinta. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you virtually. I'm calling in to you from Denakaya, which means the people's country in my language. It's very much winter here in the north. And so I'm glad I was able to attend. Sometimes when we have this much snow, it really impacts our ability to connect via Zoom. So and I'm also really grateful to be here amongst friends and colleagues, Stephanie and Lawrence. Just so good to see you both here. And you, Jeff, there in Colombia. A big Sugasinla for inviting us into this important conversation. So I'm here to share a little bit about our IPCA proposal, known as Denakea Kusan, and really the work that Stephanie and Lawrence and I are doing it is all very connected in the work that we're trying to do across Turtle Island. We're trying to protect our lands and waters that we call home. And in that work, we're also trying to safeguard the continent's wildlife, like our waterfowl. We're trying to work to protect the boreal forest and the habitats that we know are needed to have that sustainable future. And it really, through that work, really positively impacts the well-being of our people. And I've seen that firsthand in the work that we've been doing around protecting Denikiah. Denikiah is larger than even what you see on your map there, but that illustration shows the proposed area that we're trying to protect. But even beyond it, when I think about the importance of protecting lands, I think of just what our elders have told us since forever. And I was reminded of that just yesterday. An elder from Tutalini, one of our most northern Casca communities, was just talking to me and reminding me about how our footprints are everywhere across our lands. And it really is that connection that we've developed with these places that we've called home over thousands of years that is really guiding us in the work that we're doing today. We're trying to protect 40,000 square kilometers of our lands, and we're doing that according to the work and guidance of our elders, because our lands have seen a lot just within that small region. We've seen over 10 failed mines. One of the largest man-made disasters in the world is in our traditional territory. One of the last residential schools to close in Canada is within our communities. And when I think of all that our communities have faced and continue to face, even with climate change pressures and all that comes with that and living in the boreal, I also see the other side of that in the resiliency that our people have and the resiliency that our lands have. And what is of particular importance to our community is protecting a very resilient area known as Denikiah-Kusan. And that's one of the last intact regions of our traditional territory in the heart of northern British Columbia. You can change the slide there, Jeff. I think for us, when we were talking about protecting our lands, there's so many different strategies and tools that people can use. But in Canada, the conservation tool known as Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas is a really important one because it's based on the vision of the nations who are putting their plan forward on how they're going to safeguard the health of our ecosystems for generations to come. And the community that I'm from, the Cascadena, we've always believed that it's been our sacred duty to care for the land that we call home, because if you do that, it's going to take care of you. So our vision through our work is to really restore those values to these lands. And that's why we've called our proposal Denikiah Kusan, which in our language means the people's way we follow. We want to follow our ways in order to protect this land according to our customs and our beliefs. And in doing so, we know we can create a world-class protected area that all people can come and enjoy. And that shot in particular is actually of Muncho Lake, where my family's from and has lived for millennia. And so it's just examples like that that can be so powerful to the work that we're trying to do. Next slide, please. I think it's important to recognize too that in Canada, where we call home, there's this very special responsibility that we have because so much of our lands are within the boreal forest. Even I've lived my whole life in the boreal forest, and many First Nations communities in northern Canada are anchored to those types of landscapes, including our wetlands. They're such an integral part of who we are as Dena, and we know how important it is to be protecting them. And for us, you know, we really see ourselves as part of the work that's happening across the north with neighbors like Lawrence with the Mushkegowuk Council and Stephanie with the Seal River Watershed. We're trying to protect really large regions of our traditional territories. And we understand that it's a really big ask of governments and people that we're trying to work with, but we also know that it's an even bigger opportunity. And a lot of people have come to help support us in what we're trying to be doing together. And I think that opportunity is really showing up in these conversations being had at COP, because we know that when we partner up together and work together, the collaboration and relationships that come out of that are so beneficial. Next slide. Just in regards to, collaboration and relationships, I think when you talk about IPCAs, they're vital because what you're doing is you're enhancing the respect for Indigenous knowledge systems, you're sharing the resources needed, you're advocating for projects that you believe in, and ultimately you're leading to more successful conservation outcomes. And we've really seen firsthand what partnerships can do in helping us advance our IPCA, as well as the work that we're doing on the ground with our land guardian network. So I'll go to the next slide because we wanted to showcase just what that can look like on the ground. And this video, I think, does a great job of showcasing that. So whenever they're ready to play the video, go for it.
My name's Tanya Ball. I work with the Denanyeta Casca Land Guardian Network out of Lower Post, BC. We have been working with Audubon for the last 2 years, monitoring the millions of birds that pass through our area. Today we'll be going up by heli to install these ARUs. The recorders automatically will kick in and do recordings of the bird sounds each day in the morning and night. We download all of the data from the SD cards to keep in-house. We also send them off to Audubon to identify all of the birds for us and then bring all of that information back to our communities. One of the birds that come through the area is the lesser yellowlegs. Some of them will nest here, the rest will go on to the Arctic. It's just unbelievable when you think about how far they move. This will be our 3rd year of collecting data with the ARUs that we deploy. Working with Audubon has been great. It's brought a lot of different information into our Guardian program. Going through that very closely and understanding each bird that is passing through here and nesting, I think, is really important. And then we can pick up if there's threatened species on that list as well. We're working towards having areas protected here. It's a very pristine area, so we want to keep it that way. Understanding how it affects birds from all over the world is just absolutely amazing. Everything's connected.
Can you bring Jillian back for a second?
No, thank you. I think that's just a beautiful video to show the partnership and what we can really achieve when we're collaborating together on protecting lands and waters that we all deeply care about. So thanks so much, and looking forward to the rest of our time together here today.
Thank you, Jillian. Now I'd like to introduce Lawrence Martin, who leads the Mushkegowuk Council's work on a marine conservation area, and he's had a history of all sorts of work with the Mushkegowuk Council in northern Manitoba. So I'll move on to let you speak, Lawrence. Let's see if we can get that first slide up.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
My name's Tanya Ball.
Sorry, there we go.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Actually, I'm in Ontario, not northern Manitoba. Just to get that straight. I'm in northern Ontario in middle part of Canada. So if you go to that map right there that you have, that's the area we're talking about. That's the area where I come from. It's the Hudson Bay and James Bay lowlands, which boasts of like 5 billion tons of carbon in that largest carbon sink in North America. And as a matter of fact, the elders call that the breathing lands because, again, of what function it plays in its scientific ways, but also in terms of how it's interpreted in our Cree ways, or Mushkegowuk Cree, and how that becomes part of the life-giving story of the creation stories and so on. And on the shorelines, you'll see the Hudson Bay and James Bay shoreline. So we're looking at protecting both the land and the waters. And the waters includes about 90,000 square kilometers of water, which is like about 1,200 kilometers of shoreline. And on the land side, we're looking at an additional 200,000 square kilometers. So it's a big chunk of land, makes the provincial government very nervous, and other prospectors that come into the area. But nevertheless, it's an area to us that's quite important. It's very much part of our lives over the millennia. And we boast of a lot of the watersheds that come from inland and how they all lead into the Hudson Bay and James Bay. So we want to make sure that partnerships is something that we need to conduct and make sure that we reestablish. As a matter of fact, our project is called Wakotoin. Wakotoin means relationships, building relationships. And when we started this project a few years ago, talking about it, I mean, it's been more than a few years. It was 1989 when our elders got together and the chiefs and the people, and they said, we have to get together and protect our lands. And so they passed a motion at one of the general assemblies back then to look at how we can establish this conservation authority. And voila, 32 years later, here we are actually embarking on something more concrete. And it has come about, and this time around, having partners like Canada come into play, Audubon coming around and providing us the expertise on the science aspects of the birds, and many other partners that's come to the table with us. And that's this whole thing about Wakoto and establishing that relationship is important. The relationship, we were told by the elders, has to also be extended, of course, to the government. It's been a couple of 100 years of settlers that have come into the area. First, we were the suppliers for the pelt industry back then. And then we got stuck in these isolated, desolate reservation systems, and unemployment and housing issues and water issues and all of those things started to have a negative impact on our people. And also it's impacted on our access to the land, access to the food that's out in the land. But don't get me started on that section. I'll just try and focus on the environment and so on. So when you look along that shoreline, we have bird sanctuaries, we have important bird areas that have been identified, and our people have been using that area for food whenever the migratory birds come in, and they come into the millions. And like you said at the beginning, Jeff, they leave in billions, so they're really good at multiplying. But this area is really important in terms of the food source, and then for them to be able to feed, rest, and then head southward. And that's one of the things, again, our elders are telling us to look at doing, even though, this area may be pristine in terms of providing that kind of space and food source for the birds. There's a long ways that they go to the south to do their wintering grounds. So therefore, we as humans must establish that relationship with each other to ensure that these birds and these animals that move around in the territory are always safe, and that they have these particular places where they can stop and rest as they go along. And so we're really proud to be hosting all of these birds in the springtime, in the summer, and watch them fly off. And of course, we have a tremendous amount of caribou still roaming the area. But with the oncoming threat of the climate change in itself, it's changing the landscape a lot. And the elders again tell us that with the melting of the permafrost, there's a drying up of the rivers that's going on. There's drying up of the peatlands that's happening, and the migratory routes of these caribous are, we're witnessing that they're changing quite rapidly. And we also see the same thing happening with fish coming in. New kinds of fish are coming in. New species of birds are coming in. So we're really witnessing this climate change. But the biggest threat that's happening is still the industry that's climbing northward every day. And we see that on maps that we create of mining claims that are happening everywhere. So we're very much afraid of that. Every bit of drilling that's going on, or every mine that opens up, is a threat to the peatlands. It's a threat to all these animals and birds. It's a threat to our way of life here. So we are really thankful for this partnership with you guys. And we want to extend that partnership with other people along the route of where these migratory birds go, all the way to South America, because we have to ensure they have what I like to say, how I look at them as, they need their little gas stations and restaurants, just like we do when we travel as humans. We need those little places for us to stop and eat and rest up. Birds need the same thing. So we have to ensure that those places are available for them to actually do that. So I think that's the biggest ask that we have of this conference, of having the people that are on here, that are listening in or are participating, is that we all work together for that purpose, for the purpose of the birds alone, and it will impact on other things that we're trying to halt or reverse, in what's happening with the climate change. So again, thank you all, miigwech, and look forward to continuing on with the networking and also in making sure that the relationship gets bigger and bigger. That's what we're hoping for. Miigwech.
So your video here next, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
We have to speak for the environment because the environment can't speak for itself.
This MOU is a vehicle to study and assess the conditions of the waters of the bays.
We look forward to a more promising future for ourselves, the elders that are still here with us, but also to our children. We want them to have a better experience. We want them to have a better life.
We have a very long path to travel on reconciliation in this country. But every day we dip our paddle in the water, we begin to close the distance. We must work to transform historic relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. And we must similarly strive to transform our relationship with the natural world to a nature-positive, carbon-neutral future.
We have received numerous letters of support across the country from regular Joes, congratulating Mushkegowuk Cree nations on their endeavor to protect their homelands and waters.
Grand Chief Jonathan, Minister Jonathan, with the Jonathans in the room, please stand up. Again, it's really important to document this moment.
As we forge forward on this very important work, let us not look at ourselves, but rather let's consider and think about our children and grandchildren and their children. It is our responsibility to safeguard, protect their culture, our culture, tradition, and livelihood.